And then when I stop, I don't click the second thing, and we get this big bunch of nothing at the end. But so today I'll try to remember to click the second little thing that pops up. Okay, so we are recording. And here we go. So we went over parts 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2, I think we did together. User administration was kind of a short thing. And then last time we talked about indicator and data set administration. And today we're going to talk about the indicator views and creating indicator views. So here are some indicator views. I know that you guys know what I'm talking about, but just for posterity, in case someone watching this down the road doesn't. This is all the same indicator, unintentional injury deaths, and we can view the data in different ways, have different data visualizations.
How many indicator views are there normally for like one indicator?
Normally, I'd say New Mexico and US by year, New Mexico by county, New Mexico by race are the three kind of core views that I've encouraged all along. Other things that make sense to do, like age and sex. BRFS, we can do income and gender identity and stuff like that, which is nice. So it just depends on, how many the person wants to maintain and how many views it takes to tell the story. If age is a really big factor, then it might be good to have a view by age or age and sex. And small area, I also like to encourage small area where we have the data, but it's getting so dated now. I'm just kind of keeping them alive. But
Chris said today that he thinks he's almost done with vital records, I think, and that they finally reposted Jeremy's job. So maybe there's geocoding coming.
that would be great. Yeah, I think that 2018 was a big question because Jeremy was like all but done, and then he left, and Chris didn't know where it was or something, didn't know where to pick it up. I don't know. But yeah, it would be good. Okay, so when we're creating an indicator, and so when I did these slides, and this was the last set, I was creating this youth experiencing housing instability indicator. So I got a lot of, screenshots and just plugged them in. But I'll use this indicator as an example, and then also this unintentional injury deaths indicator, because it has a lot of different kinds of views. So we start with add a new view. And this indicator, we wanted to have views. So this is YRRS. So we can have the year, county, sex, and grade level instead of sex and age. Race, ethnicity, and gender identity are important risk factors in the YRRS. So I wanted those views. And similar to when we start with a new indicator, when we start with a new view, we want to think a little bit about the name. And for an indicator view, what I typically do is, and it says on this slide, and then also in the, the help text when you're in admin, it starts with the indicator name, and then a dot, and then some segments. And I like to do the category dimension and the series dimension. And if there's anything else that is needed, like to identify different views, like the food insecurity indicator, I have 2 county views, one for children and one for adults. So I have the child, or it's one for overall, one for children and one for overall. So things like that need to be considered. Bless you. And so here are the view names that I created for youth risk homeless: year, county, sex, grade, sex, race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. And here are the view titles. So in the old IBIS 2.3, the view title had 2 parts, a main title and a subtitle. And in 3.0, the titles are being created by the app. So here's the page where we create the name or supply the name. And then the title, so I was talking about the automated title. So in 3.0, the automated title starts with the concise title at the indicator's detail level. So the indicator level, concise title, youth housing instability, and then it's followed by the view title. So youth housing instability by year, New Mexico, blah, blah. And then the period title. So that is how the data view titles are constructed. And of course, if you don't like the title it comes up with, you can fiddle with the inputs to the title, or if you want to totally overwrite the automated title, you can do that too. So, and then here, down here is the measure title, and that provides the map legend title and the y-axis title on charts. So here's another example for unintentional injury deaths, and view title, period title, and here's the measure title, which you can also overwrite. Another example, crude rates for injury deaths because it's by age and sex. All right, so I'm backing up a little bit to the data sets list for this youth experiencing housing instability indicator. And it just has one data set. We don't have US comparisons because it was a state added question. So we only have New Mexico, and there's only one measure. We don't have age adjusted for the high school survey. So there's one data set, and that data set has one characteristic of the data set is this measure. So when we go into the views detail, so we've created the name and a title and we're filling this out. When we see the measure, here there's only one available because this whole indicator only has one data set, and so by definition has one measure. And measure title override. So instead of in the y-axis having percentage, low values are good, we can put percentage experiencing housing instability. And I think I told you guys that I created a big list of measures initially for all the BRFS indicators when we were going to use those measures for queries. And then it was just I could see that it was just going to be a mess, because having all those different measures in every query we were going to need different map files and DEF files for all those different measures. It's like, oh, this is crazy. So then I talked with Garth and we created this title override because that's the big thing that's different. You know, so a measure has a value type and a desirable direction and a footnote. And, you know, if the desirable direction and the footnote are the same, we don't need a new measure if we can just override the title. Okay, so core detail, we're on this detail page. And chart definition, this is the by year. And I've got a special chart that has New Mexico as a turquoise line and US as a dark line. So that's the one I'm using here. If there were a map, this particular view doesn't require a map, but there's a map definition tab that comes up if it's a geo dimension and a map is appropriate. And just to look under the hood a little bit more, that, let me go back here, line for New Mexico, US, first value turquoise, is line nmus.json in the IBIS content JSON Kendo folder. There's a file, and that file name has to match, I don't know if you can see this down here, this is the chart list in the admin application, has to match the chart name. And remember, name is the unique identifier. Here's the title, line for New Mexico, US, first value turquoise. We selected on the title, but this name has to match this file name. And if we look in the file, the JSON file, we can see that here is a list of colors that it uses. The first one first, the second one second, blah, blah. And so we have two series. So this is turquoise and this is that dark, dark navy blue. And if we had more series, they'd be in these other colors. Any questions?
Can you just kind of explain what a JSON file is in general?
Yeah, maybe.
I know it has to do with making maps, but that's like all I know.
Well, it's, you know, that's a Kendo chart file. So if we look in the JSON folder, Leaflet has a bunch of JSON map definition files, like US states, that, you know, each of these files just has like what's different after it reads the base. So base JSON is the main map definition. And it's a text file that these charting and mapping applications need and use to tell them what to do. And so we look in JSON Kendo, there's a base chart, and this line is, you know, has some definitions, whatever's different about that line chart from the base chart. So here's the base chart. So it's a text file. It has a very particular format, which is kind of hard to see if you're used to XML. You know, if you try to modify this and you forget a squirrely bracket, or, you know, it doesn't like it. But Yeah, so they're text files that the apps use that
And
define
do the
colors.
apps generate them too? Like, I mean, where does one come from? Does ArcGIS just spit one out or something?
No.
Okay.
Well, okay, so there's another kind of JSON, and these are the shape files. So these can be, so like here's the Geo County JSON, and each of these lines, oops, relaunch, not now. I don't know what I did. I was trying to do this. So each of these lines is a county, and it's a big long line that has these are the geo coordinates of where the vector starts. So this is a polygon, and it's comprised of multiple vectors that end where they begin. So here's the beginning point, and then it goes to this point, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, and it ends up pretty close to where it started. 107.25, 36.21. 107.25, 36.21. Yeah, it ends up where it started. So it just draws these lines, and these are just instructions that are made, that are in a format that the app can use. Now these polygon and line files can be created by ArcGIS. So we can take a shape file from ArcMap and convert it into a JSON. So that's something that there are apps online that do that. Or
Okay.
like QGIS can read a shape file and output a JSON file. So I mean, it's just part of the technology. Anything else while we're thinking about graphics? No. And then this this chart name and map names having to match the file name is, that's a thing that's specific to IBIS. Garth wrote the IBIS Java to match these up. And then another thing that might be important to know is that in these shape files, the county ID must match the dimension value. So these are the county dimensions, 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, blah, 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 and 28 for Los Alamos.
And they're just like the FIPS code.
They are the FIPS codes. They're whatever the dimension values are. And for counties, our dimension values are FIPS codes. Just the last few digits. All right. Excuse me. Okay, and then we're going across the tabs. So we looked at the core detail, the chart definition, external data visualization. If you want to pull in an image and use it as part of your indicator view, you can do that, or you can have like chart definition could be no chart, and you could use a chart that you created in Excel or some other program, or a map image. So there's like a static image versus an iframe that you can create to embed some, I don't know, ArcGIS map or something. I've never done this, but that's what it's there for. And I think Garth is going to be looking at this with this next IBIS-PH story page, embedding the ArcGIS stuff, depending on how he does it. And then the other tab has, for the view, external content. If you would rather just go to some other page and pull it in for the view, you can do that. And then these editor comments are just, admin comments. They're for us. I like to, often I'll put, if it's a URL, like for where I got unemployment numbers or something like that, I'll put the data source URL in here so I can find the data again. Okay, that's all pretty easy stuff. So here we are back at the view list, and I've just created my year.nm.us. And one thing we talked about last time was that when you create an indicator, on the indicators detail page, we have these similar tabs. On the other tab, there's the default view selection. So when you don't have any views, this is blank. So when you create a view that you want to use as your default view, you need to go back to the detail page and select the view. And typically in IBIS, my trend graphs are the default view. In tracking, county, I think, is often the default view. That's like a really standard visualization for tracking. I think it's the only one that's required, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So after we finish with the views detail, with the next button down, the left nav button, is the views data sets. And there's only one data set, so it's the one. And if you're an admin, like we all have admin rights in the admin application, we can select this or not. For others who don't have admin rights, we select this when we set it up, but they can't change it. So if they want to change it, if they need to change it for some reason, then we have to do that for them. I have to sneeze, so in a minute I'm going to stop. Excuse me. Okay, so next, views dimensions. So here we have the period dimension is year odd. So these are all the dimensions that are available in the data set, with the exception of there's only one period dimension, because we selected on the detail page, the views detail page, which period dimension we wanted to use. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes for this slide. Every indicator needs a period dimension, and if period is not the category, it needs also a category dimension. So if this were a county view, the period would be a constant. We'd maybe aggregating 3 years, say, and then we'd have category would be the counties. Let's see. Oh, this used as constant usually applies to the period dimension, but sometimes there's a constant dimension that's not a period dimension, and that food insecurity indicator is one of those. So for the county views where I have child and overall, I have that child and overall as a constant dimension for the with one of the values selected for child and the other value selected for overall. I could also do that as a series dimension. Okay. Now I'm going to look at this unintentional injury deaths indicator. If we go back up and look at the data sets list, this indicator has 3 data sets because we have 2 data sources, New Mexico Vital Records and CDC, and we have 2 different measures, age-adjusted and crude rates. And between those, that 2 by 2, 3 of the 4 cells are occupied. So we have age-adjusted for the CDC, and that needs its own data set. So if we look at that, the views list, there are a lot of views here. And I've selected the county view, so we're going to take a look at that. If I go in and look at the detail page, you can see there's my 2 measures. So the app has looked across the data sets and said, okay, I see 2 measures. Which one are you using for this view? And when I go to the next nav button down, Views Data Sets, it says, well, we're using an age-adjusted measure, so these are the 2 data sets it could be. Are we using both of them? Yes. Okay, back to the detail page. The next thing is after the measure is the period. And for the county data view, I'm using a 5 years aggregated. Now, one thing that was kind of interesting here is this calendar month. I couldn't figure out where that was coming from. I went back to the data sets and I looked at all of the dimensions that were active for the data sets, and month wasn't in there. So I went to the database and looked, and one of the tables, apparently at some point, calendar month had been selected, and there was an old orphan record in the database, and this page found it and brought up calendar month. So I had to go and just delete it by hand in the database, and then it stopped showing up. But, weird things like
you
that.
had to go in that Access database, or?
Yeah, I went in using Access as a tool. I went in connected to the admin database, which is a SQL Server database, and found the table that was causing this to show up. And there's a table called dimension to indicator view. No, dimension to data set. I can't remember which table it was, but it was in one of them. And we'll do a training where we just go through connecting to the database and finding stuff, and because that's something that is important for you gals to know how to do. Okay, so I selected this 5-year groups. So by selecting 5-year groups, it's going to cause that period dimension, even though there are four shown here, but really 3 that are in the data set for this indicator that could show up on the views dimensions page. By selecting this is the one that's going to show up on the views dimensions page. So I've got this 5 years period dimension. I'm using it as a constant. And then for this county view, I'm going to use my counties as a category, but I also want New Mexico and US overall to appear in the data as comparison values, and they have their own dimensions. So I'm selecting those as categories also, and that'll tack those on. Let's see. Okay, so here's a question for you. What if I'm on this Views Dimensions page and it has the wrong period dimension listed for the data view? What should I do to change it?
You change it on the details of the by county view right there, right? That's highlighted. Like if it has year group 5 years and you want 3 year, then you pick 3 year or single.
Yep, exactly. So I go back to the views detail page and I select a different period dimension, and that new period dimension will appear here. And actually, if you mouse over this help button, that's what it will tell you. Because it took me a while to get that through my head. It's like, oh, where do I change this? I forget. I called Garth one day, how do I change this? And then it stumped him too. It's like, oh, I don't know. Let's see. So it's, yeah, just go back and change it. All right, let's see. And
you're using it as a constant because it's a so you're using the 5 year number as a constant because it's the by county view, right?
right, and I'm just using one 5-year period. And that same 5-year period is used for every data point in the county chart. So the county differs, but the year period doesn't. And that's what makes it a constant.
Okay, got it.
And let's see, one other question here. What if I'm on the detail page and the period that I need isn't on this drop-down list? Then what do I do?
That's where I'm stuck with the birth outcomes thing. So what do you do?
Well, the app looks across all the data sets to see what periods are available. So in this case, if I want to add something here, I have to go back to the data sets that I want to use for this view and make sure that that period dimension has been selected to go into that data set. And then when I get back to here, you'll see your new dimension on the list. Good question. Oh, I asked the question. Good question, Lois. Okay.
Good question, Lois. Pat on the back to you.
Thank you, atta girl. All right. So this is the county chart with the 33 counties and the New Mexico and U.S. values all on the same chart. Ta-da. And there's only one data series. There's no legend, so there's no second series, and just one category dimension. Even though these are different dimensions, actually. But they all function as categories for this view.
Oh, and somehow I thought this was firearms, but this is just unintentional injuries, not necessarily by firearms. Got it.
Correct.
Well, their Rio Arriba County is high, so it probably is.
Yeah, it might be. Unintentional injury. So motor vehicle and poisoning is in here. So poor Rio Arriba. Okay, and then as I go down my list of buttons here, we looked at views dimensions. Now views dimension values, category values. Okay, I'm back to youth homelessness or housing instability. So this is where I'm using the period dimension as the category. So category values, these are the 3 years that I have data for. Series values, right. New Mexico is the only series for this because we didn't have US data. And the constant value There's no constant on here, just the 3 data points for New Mexico YRRS youth housing instability. And here's what it looks like. Pretty simple. Now, oh, really? That's it. I was going to go back and look at the other one. That's it.
I like that picture.
Isn't that funny?
What
It's like,
are those guys?
I don't know. It just is a big question, isn't it? What's all over their clothes? Why are they wearing masks?
Hey,
When was
scary
this
B
photo
horror
taken?
movie.
Yeah, like some kind of nuclear something or other. I don't know. Anyway, so that was kind of quick. That was very quick. Let's go look at, let's see. Well, we can go look at that injury. Oh, I know what I want to do. I'm going to look at my access database coming up in my other screen here. So one of the reasons it's such a pain to if you want to change dimensions for a view, it's probably easier to just create a new view. But this is the table dimension to data set where that calendar month was showing up. I have a list that I can send. Let's see. I think it's going to be here. IBIS app admin DB stuff. Nope. Nope. Okay, well, when I find it, oh, version 3.0, I bet this is it. So I have these scripts that, so if you want to change something, well, let me open the document I'm thinking of. Common scripts, I think this is it. So common things are updating a field value for selected records. And then, and here's script for, how to do it. And okay, here's the list of tables that need to be touched when you change a data set name. So I mentioned that I had created all of these data measures for BRFS that we're not using anymore. So all of these percent sad, hopeless, percent, percent 5 a day, percent chronic drinking. It was just crazy, and I should deactivate them, but some of my indicators are still using these, and I'm kind of in the middle of a process of going back and modifying everything, but I'm trying to decide if I need to change the data set name, because data set names, if we look at the list of data sets, you probably can't see this, or maybe we can see it here better. Indicators. Let's go to that injury. Unintentional death. Data sets. Okay, so the name is the indicator name, the measure name, and the data source. So for my BRFS indicators, let's see, I had like alcohol, binge drink adult, data sets. So see, this one is percent binge was the measure I created for that. But really, what I want to use is the more generic percent low values are desirable. So if I go back and look at my measures here, I can find PCT low, percent, desirable low. So this is my generic measure that I'd like to use because I can override the title and I won't need 80 measures for the BRFS, even though we're not using the database for queries anymore. It's just unnecessary to have all of that in there. But okay, so I've got the data set name for binge drinking has that percent binge measure name in the title. And I think I don't care. So here's one where I think it's probably not worth my time. It would have been nice if I had, and I am using percent desirable low now for binge drinking instead of percent binge. But it's like, well, as the unique identifier for the data set, it would, so list of tables to touch when a data set name changes, the data set table, data set record ancillary value, data source to data set, dimension to data set, ancillary value to data set, data set to there's just, it's a big job. And making sure, because I have to do it in the database, and if I miss something, then something's not going to connect and it's going to break something. And I'm like, those names aren't that important to have the correct measure name in it. It's going forward, we'll try to do it right, but okay. And then here's list of tables to touch when changing to a different dimension. And, so because it's a relational database, all of these things are related. You change it in one place, you've got to go change it in all the other places. So with Chelsea,
go ahead.
With your birth indicators, we'll just have to take a look and see. It might be better to just inactivate views you don't want anymore and create new views. It might be that that's going to be easier than,
because otherwise we would have to change all of these things for each time period we want to change, for example.
right.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm thinking, let's look at your questions. I wonder if I reply, I can change the size on here. I don't know when it is I can, sometimes there's like you know what I'm talking about in Outlook, sometimes there's a thing where I can change the size, sometimes there isn't. But just change the font size. Okay. So I've got the recording on still, and if it seems like we're getting too far away from the training topic, I'll stop it. But I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is good to have it tacked on here. So Chelsea says she wants to tidy up and standardize these indicators and using 5-year blocks across the board, with the trend line giving the annual picture for the overall New Mexico. One has US data. I'm thinking we can get US data for well, we have it for low birth weight. I'm thinking premature births we can get. I don't know about sex ratio. We may be able to just compute it. Total fertility rate, we'd have to compute that by hand. I don't think that's on CDC Wonder. And then infant mortality, we can get that for the US, of course. I'm pretty sure. I don't know about neonatal and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think if we can add in the US, that would make it just would mean more, I think, to have the US, like some kind of comparison.
Okay, and then you say, especially how to change the time periods so we can figure out what exactly we want when we can set it up. So the time periods using 5 years across the board. So small area here, we've got a 5-year period, but county we're using 3-year.
Right.
By race, ethnicity, we could do 5 years using that 5-year time period as a constant. So I think for some of these, we can just change, we can modify how we're using the period dimension. And the period dimension, well, let's take a look at it. Okay.
And also, so with the small area, it was 2013 to 2017. Is that the last time the small area, like, is that the latest small area data?
It is. We've been waiting for geocoded data.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought.
To update that.
And then should I do this on my machine so that I have the changes and can fill them in? Because otherwise you would have to publish it, right, for me to be able to access? Is that how it works?
Nope. No matter where we are when we're on the admin application, we're modifying the same database.
Oh, okay. Cool. Somehow I thought it was my local, like the portal.
Nope. So there's 2 low birth weight indicators. One, so Rena, I don't know how familiar you are with these, but tracking has their own definitions, which I think make a lot of sense, but they're not the traditional definitions. So CDC hasn't adopted them, but it's singleton births, term singleton births. So if you have twins or triplets, they're going to be lower birth weight. And so it makes sense to not include those in your low birth weight rate. And the same with term births versus preterm births. So the CDC, the traditional definition includes all numbers of births, all multiple births and single births, and regardless of whether they're preterm. So tracking has their own, and that's what they use on their site. And it's one of these where, let's see, if we go here, we've got hidden checked, so it doesn't come up on the NM IBIS indicator list, because we don't want 2 low birth weight indicators in NMIBIS anyway. So it doesn't come up, you can't navigate to it from our site unless you know the, well, unless you know the URL. You could bring it up in NMIBIS if you know the name and stuff like that. Okay, so let's look at views. And here we have county and non-standard period we're not using anymore, but this is good. Single and 5-year groups are available for county. Is that, am I looking at the right thing, Courtney? I mean, Chelsea?
Yeah, I was just wondering that because so the low birth weight we're looking at low birth weight, right?
Right.
So
maybe you were looking at the other low birth weight.
I feel like I noticed though that it was IBIS-PH. I think I was looking at the actual indicator report on when I was getting that email together, I looked at the published indicator reports. Hang on, I'm double checking now. Not
Or like where you run the whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes those are pretty lengthy.
So the title of the one that is published is Percent of Live Born Infants with Low Birth Weight by County 2017 to 2019. And it has...
Oh, look at that. It's using the NMIBIS birth weight. So that's the one. It's so tracking.
Oh, we got the wrong data on there. Oh,
I forget where these indexes are managed, but this is the one that the Family Health Program, well, allegedly maintains. Oh, I didn't say that. I've been maintaining. And the one that is set up for tracking is actually, let's go back, birth IBIS-PH low birth weight. So that's something that needs to be fixed in the index. We'll still address the issues.
Okay, because yeah, I saw this one too, and I changed because I noticed that the map is different colors than the like normal, like the purple yellow that we use. So I figured out how to change that. But so is this the IBIS-PH one?
Yeah, the IBIS-PH one has IBIS-PH in the indicator name. Birth IBIS-PH low birth weight.
Oh, there we are. I was zoomed in.
But non-standard period, I don't think we want to use anymore, but let's see if it's still in there. So we only have one data set, so we don't have a US data set, but we certainly could. What was I looking for? Data set dimensions. So non-standard period is something that has been selected because I think in the past it was used. I think it might have been Tony just added a year to the 5 years and had a 6-year period, and that made it the year he updated it, it created a non-standard period.
well, Tony's gone.
Yep. Hi, Stephanie.
And the infant mortality still has the non-standard periods, which is really hard to tell what the non-standard period even is.
I know. So let's see, data sets. So we're supposed to put a comment somewhere about let's see, if we look at the views list, county, 5-year groups, I don't know which, okay, so let's use this. Let me put my thinking cap on. So we have an indicator, birth, EPHT, infant, mort. And if I want to look in the data set and see what the periods are for these different views, if I go to access, dimension to data set, I want to filter it to data sets that begin with this indicator name. And here are the dimensions and the usages. So for period equals period, year default is that standard, non-standard. It's just it's the default thing. If you don't choose a year period or, a period dimension, it just goes to that. So this is just telling us it's used in 3 different measures, I guess those are. So this is perinatal. What's this one? Oh, that's US. And this is New Mexico vital records. So how can we tell what views are using it? So if we want, let's see, we have data dimension to indicator view. There's a table. And indicator view name begins with and dimension name equals year default. So it's used for the 3 county views, not overall infant mortality, but neonatal, post-neonatal, and perinatal.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, I mean, we could just delete these here, but I think that'll leave orphan records in the dataset records. And these are big tables, so it takes them a long time to come up.
So I guess rather than the non-standard period, can we just change it to be a 5-year block and use that instead of the non-standard?
You can. I'm just kind of messing around here, looking at the implications. So these are the data points. And x equals year default. They're all county views, which we saw. And there's one other table. So if we want to just get rid of these, And I don't know, sometimes I spend too much time just kind of cleaning up things. But we could delete these old values. Then we could, I think, delete that dimension to indicator view and dimension value to indicator view. I don't think it would have a dimension value because there's no value. So these are the ancillary values, and there's usually 4 of these to every data point. So this table is 4 times as big as the records table. So this is at the very bottom of the hierarchy. So I know that deleting these records isn't really going to affect anything if we decide we don't want to use this dimension anymore for this indicator. These are just values that might be used by something, but I think it would be okay to delete them. But it's not that necessary that we do it right now either, because it will take a minute. And well, maybe I should just I've just been kind of messing around, showing you kind of what I try to think about when changing these things. So it was the 3 county views, and okay, so this one is using 5-year groups.
Right. And the reason it wasn't showing up is because the index for tracking is actually sending it to the wrong one, right? So we just need to put in the IBIS-PH.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you know how to change the map from...
Yeah, I was proud of myself for figuring that one out.
Yeah. Okay, so view list, neonatal by county. Let's change that to 5-year. View list. Now when we go look at the views records, they're going to be blank because
Right.
it's not using 5-year groups. The data aren't listed under 5-year groups. Cause, race, ethnicity, state. Oh, these are inactive views. Okay, so we've got county year. County, did we look at this one? Year, county. There's the other one. Year. And since the data set had 5-year groups, we can go ahead and change that, no problem. And like I said, if we go to, well, let's go down the list, data sets. It's expecting some US data, which is great. 5-year uses constant, that's great. Infant age uses series because they're different infant age groups. So if we go here, categories are counties, New Mexico. If you want to add US.
Oh, that's where it is. Okay.
Yeah, series. These are all infant, and the constant value is the most recent 5-year period, which should be available. And views records. Oh.
Because you have to save the changes, right? Or I put this in. I did put in some data.
Okay.
When I could manage to figure out how to change it all. So I got this far.
Uh-huh. Good. Yeah, great.
Because this is the overall, right? So it wasn't the like neonatal or perinatal.
Correct.
Yeah, those I didn't get this far, I don't think. Yeah, so that's probably blank.
Now, I don't know if we can get US data for these infant subcategories. I'm thinking we should be able to, but I don't know, on Wonder. I just wonder.
Yeah, I'll have to look through Wonder more. Should the year group that be used as constant, right?
Right.
Okay.
And then we've got county and New Mexico overall. Category, counties in New Mexico overall. This is neonatal. And the constant value right here.
So now that'll be blank.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even go there. Use data sets, use dimensions. Now the US data set isn't showing up because this perinatal mortality dimension, is that right? Measure. Let's see. Data sets list. Yeah, this is a different measure because it's for 1,000 births and fetal deaths. And we just have that, a data set there for New Mexico, but not for US.
Yeah, perinatal may be a specific to tracking
Yeah.
definition.
Would
And
we
it-
want
you
to
know what-
try to get the tracking overall measure? Or
You know, the thing is, it isn't all states.
right?
We need to talk about that.
And this
Right.
view isn't active.
The
County view for
Oh, okay.
perinatal.
Oh, just by
Looks like-
year.
Yeah, just by year. I don't know if that's because it was so dated,
Yeah, it could be. I have no idea.
but if you want to make it active, there's where you do it. And then data sets, post neonatal, dimensions, uses constant. Did we get that far on the last one?
I think we did.
Let me back up here. So this is perinatal data set dimensions. We did not get as far as we needed. Dimension values, series, perinatal, and 5-year groups. Yeah, in your dreams, right? I don't know where we are with perinatal. Somewhere. Not very.
Well, here, I'll look.
Okay. So I'm thinking maybe I'll stop the recording. We'll keep looking at stuff, but we're kind of getting into the weeds a little. Does that make sense?
Sure.